This is ABC7 News at 7, your Suncoast News. We're here for you.
As he said, this was a situation where I did this in the 70s. It's here, I'm here and now. That happened in the past. I just want to let it go. So I think he had regrets about that it still haunted him.
The widow of Clifford Irving sits down for an ABC7 exclusive interview discussing the hoax and life with Clifford in his final years. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alan Cohen, and welcome to ABC7 at 7. We'll have an exclusive interview with the widow of Clifford Irving in a bit, but first, our top 7 stories at 7. You might remember around Christmas, someone started setting cars on fire in Venice. Tonight, police believe they have their man. 45-year-old Vitaly Velsh was arrested by Venice police today on arson charges. 7 vehicles were burned on Seaboard Avenue in Venice. A witness placed a Velsh in the area around the time of the fires. When Venice police questioned him, he reportedly claimed to have been somewhere else.
Found him not only lying about the time that he was there, but also the clothing that he was wearing on that surveillance video matched perfectly the clothing of our suspect, who could be seen on surveillance video lighting these fires.
It was discovered Velsh and the victim were in a financial dispute over car repairs. Charges tonight in connection with an arson at a downtown Sarasota restaurant. Police say 39-year-old Joe Thompson started the fire behind Manville Beer Garden early this morning. Thompson was found sitting in a chair facing the flames. The fire started on the backside of the building around 2 a.m. The restaurant wasn't damaged, but phone lines were. Fire officials say the fire was started by a lighter and no accelerant was used. Manatee County detectives are trying to find the man who robbed a cell phone store this morning. It happened around 9 a.m. at the Cricket Wireless off of 15th Street East. Witnesses say the man entered the store asking about cell phones, then demanded cash, took 2 phones, and took off. Deputies are looking for a man in his 20s or 30s. He is about 6'3", had a blue bandana over his face, and was armed with a handgun during the robbery. Anyone with information should call Crime Stoppers at 866-634-TIPS. The Northport Police Department is still looking for a second shooter in a murder. Police have already charged Dante Stanley Jr. with the murder of 19-year-old Trent Bartle Thomas. He is also charged with armed home invasion, aggravated battery, and aggravated assault. Anyone with information on the second shooter should contact Northport Police. We have a big special election taking place on the Suncoast in a few weeks, House 72, and the Sarasota Supervisor of Elections is prepping to make sure it goes smoothly. To give mail-in voters a peace of mind, election officials are reaching out to voters in ways they never did before in terms of in-person voting.
There is a track your ballot feature on the website where you can see if the ballot has been received back from by the Supervisor of Elections.
There is still time to register to vote in the February 13th House election. You can register online at registerflorida.gov, but you only have until midnight tonight to do so. Tampa Democrat Sean Shaw is the son of the first black Chief Justice of the Florida Supreme Court, and now he is throwing his hat in for the ring for Attorney General. Shaw, a state representative, announced his candidacy outside the Florida Supreme Court today, where his father, the late Lender Shore Jr., was a justice from 1983 to 2003, serving as Chief Justice from 1990 to 1992. Shaw says he would be a watchdog on health care issues involving the LGBTQ community and the opioid epidemic.
The people of our state should be able to count on their Attorney General to protect them, to always enforce the rule of law, not to have someone more concerned with how their comments will play out on Fox News. Soon, they're going to have one. This is the best office that you can have to protect Floridians from anything. From fraud, from elderly abuse, from children, from the opioid crisis. That's why I am excited for this. We're going to do something when we get to this office.
Shaw is the fourth member of the State House to enter the contest, joining Republicans Jay Fant, Frank White, and Ross Spano. Former Hillsborough County Circuit Court Judge Ashley Moody is also in the Republican contest. Shaw joins Hillsborough County Attorney Ryan Torrens in the Democratic field. Requiring nursing homes to have adequate backup power, blocking storm-damaged properties from being built in high-risk areas, and looking into changes in highway traffic flow during evacuations are among hurricane proposals now moving through the state legislature. The House committee passed 78 recommendations out of 161 proposals. The bills focus on Hurricane Irma recovery, the impact on Florida of people fleeing Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, and how to better prepare for future storms.
Instead of rebuilding and continuing to rebuild every time there's a storm, looking at ways to perhaps encourage the development to come outside of those floodplains or areas that are considered to be high risk.
The recommendations will head to committees to determine the potential impact on the state budget. Now let's head over to ABC7's chief meteorologist Bob Harrigan with the first alert forecast. Bob.
A distant past of the hurricanes. Now we're dealing with snow in the deep south. Not hurricane warnings or watches, but winter storm warnings. And that's a result of this strong cold front, Alan, that's bringing snow all the way down into Louisiana, right there near New Orleans. They're getting a rain-snow mix right now, and all the way to Houston. They had snow showers earlier today. That is pushing off to the east. Yes, the Panhandle is going to get some of that, and there are some school closings up in North Florida as a result of the snow moving in tomorrow. Now, a freeze watch is in effect for us, mainly east of I-75. West of that, we are going to see temperatures into the mid-30s. That's because of the northwest wind and the fact that the Gulf water temperature is still in the upper 50s. Within a mile or two of the coast, temperatures won't be as cold there, but still, it'll feel like about 25 to 30 degrees even west of I-75 due to those strong northwest winds and the wind chill advisory in effect for tomorrow night. Not tonight. It's going to be a rather warm night tonight with low temperatures right around seasonal averages in the low 50s. Now, as far as the winds go, Ellen, they're light out of the northwest right now, anywhere from 5 to 10 miles an hour. We're in for a pleasant evening, and we'll stay that way through the morning tomorrow, but then everything is going to change, and it looks like freezing temperatures. So you're going to have to bring in the plants tomorrow night, some of your sensitive plants, and obviously take care of the small pets. Bring those in as well.
Don't leave the dog
Don't leave the dog outside. And even for a walk, I mean, it can get pretty cold when you're talking wind chills in the mid-20s.
Right, we're saving on the AC, but the heat keeps popping on.
Up, and I think that costs a little bit more even at times. So I know my bill was high last week.
One way or the other. Thanks a lot, Bob.
Yeah.
And still to come in ABC7 at 7, the exclusive, the wife of Clifford Irving, the man who wrote the fake autobiography of Howard Hughes.
Invest in Kids is a $7.5 million project to build a new Boys and Girls Club in South Manatee County. I'm Caleb Grimes, and I was a club kid. It's where I learned important life lessons, leadership, integrity, responsibility, and baseball. Thousands of kids attend the Boys and Girls Clubs, and after years of use, their club is slowly falling apart. Help us invest in kids. Make your donation today.
Credit card debt can ruin your life. If you owe $10,000 and minimum payments are siphoning away your paycheck each month, you can get debt-free in less time than you think.
I've paid $800 a month for the past 3 years and haven't changed the balance on my credit card.
Get debt-free now has a program to reduce your debt, stop the harassing phone calls, avoid financial ruin, and settle for less than you owe.
I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders.
You're pre-approved for our special hardship program if you owe $10,000 or more. Upon payment of your new lower balance, your debt will finally shrink until you are debt-free.
My family no longer has 30 years of payments ahead of us at 20% interest.
There's no fees until you see results. So call now, make one monthly program payment, and free up your cash. Resolve your debt.
Call 800-685-6422, 800-685-6422.
Thank you. You got a king?
Go fish! In your face, in your face,
It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
You know, fortunately, this was my first job out of college, so I was able to come back home and work in my hometown. I wore two hats. I was sports director and I was a news anchor. I did that for a few years and then decided to go full-time into news. Well, I love our team here at ABC7. We have a great mix, and it really is a great mix of personalities, of experience that meshes really well into a really strong team. I'm Scott Dennis, and I'm here for you.
Watch Good Morning Suncoast on ABC7, weekdays starting at 5.
Many of you probably didn't know he lived here, but a lot of you will remember the huge scandal he was best known for. Clifford Irving died in Sarasota last month. Remember the name Clifford Irving? Remember the phony autobiography of Howard Hughes in the early 1970s? Ray Collins recently sat down with his widow for this fascinating look at one of the nation's most controversial authors.
It may be hard to believe this little boy would grow up to be at the center of one of the most notorious literary hoaxes in history. Clifford Irving, born in 1930 and raised in Manhattan. He began at the New York Times, and by the time he was 40, he had written several novels. But it was what happened next that launched his life into infamy.
Did you bring your cooperate with you on that book?
I'm sorry, I've got no comment at this point.
Irving hatched a scheme to pretend he wrote an autobiography about billionaire recluse Howard Hughes. Irving banked on Hughes never wanting to come forward to stop the hoax. But Hughes eventually did, but not before Irving collected over $500,000 that he promised to pass along to Hughes. Irving eventually confessed and served 17 months behind bars.
That prison was a nice place to visit, but I don't want to live there. Do you owe anybody any money at this point? Yes, I owe a total of about just under $1 million to the IRS, to McGraw-Hill, and to my various attorneys. How do you think you're going to pay that off, or are you? Slowly.
I really wanted him to write a memoir because his life, apart from the hoax, was so fascinating.
This is Julie Irving. This sophisticated Australian met Cliff on a ski lift in Aspen back in the 1990s, and despite their 20-plus year age difference, she, according to Wikipedia, became his sixth and final wife.
It was the stories. I just wanted to hear the stories.
They moved into this ranch-style home along Philippi Creek 4 years ago, a home decorated by Cliff's paintings, including one of Julie in the pool that doesn't skip many details.
You want me to move all this?
We sat down at the same table where Cliff very recently spent much of his final years reading, writing, and thinking. I began by asking Julie about the hoax that later defined his life. Had you heard of him or about him when you first met him?
I think I had. I was about 18 when the hoax broke. I was in Australia. I have a vague recollection, but didn't know the whole story. So when I met Cliff and he started to tell me about the hoax, I was fascinated. And because he just had one story after another.
Some people would have found the hoax as being a turnoff. How did you find it?
I was fascinated that he had the audacity to do it.
You didn't see it as a sign of dishonesty?
Oh, in a way I did. Yes. I did see it. Absolutely I did. I think in a way I'm glad he went to prison, because I think it really made him realise that he couldn't get away with doing something like this.
Do you think he had any regrets about it?
I do.
Did it come up a lot in your conversations over the years, or rarely?
It did come up. I mean, we talked about it. It was always a topic that people wanted to know, like friends of ours and people that met Cliff. That was what he was known for, so people wanted to hear. And he didn't feel comfortable talking about it, but then when he did, he would just slowly open up and reveal different details about the episode, but he was bored with it. He says, as he said, this was a situation where I did this in the 70s. I'm here and now. That happened in the past. I just want to let it go. So I think he had regrets about that, that it still haunted him. But he tried to use it to his advantage as well.
In fact, he eventually sold the rights to the story. Richard Gere starred in a movie called The Hoax.
I mean, I kind of imagine Clifford sitting around at a dinner party, and by all accounts, he was an incredibly charming guy, and saying, what if you wrote a book, Mixing Drinks? What if you wrote a book, a story, about someone who could never refute it because he's too crazy to refute it? He doesn't talk to anybody. How long do you think he could get away with that? And I think that just started this process, and I think it just got out of hand.
When he didn't like the movie, I didn't like the movie, he was very distressed about it because they had been calling him and getting as much information as they could about the actual events, and then they rewrote a lot of it.
Julie says her husband spent much of his time at home playing online chess with worldwide competitors, going out to lunch with a few friends, and belonging to a local club that even Julie admits is ironic.
He joined the Liars Club.
Come on. Really? There's a Liars Club?
A Liars Club. And it was a group of writers that met every few weeks.
That's pretty ironic. The end came fast last month for the 6'3", 250-pound man with size 16 feet. Julie says she was in Australia when Cliff came down with what appeared to be a hiatal hernia, but later turned out to be a cancerous mass on the pancreas.
He was in pain, didn't want to go to the hospital. Finally, he said, yes, I'll go to the hospital. And within a matter of, I think, 3 or 4 days, he passed. But the funny story is the day before he passed, the doctor came in to see him, and the doctor raised the bed to eye level with Cliff, and Cliff said, "Doctor, I want to go." And the doctor said, he knew what Cliff was talking about. He said, "Cliff, I can't help you with that. If I do, I'll go to jail." And Cliff said, "I won't tell anyone," which was just, that was just so classic Cliff. You know, and everybody, the doctor just roared with laughter at that.
Cliff's death at the age of 87 was written up all the way from the New York Times to the Aspen Times. Despite his very full life, it was the hoax that is still detailed in bold print next to his picture. Julie understands it, although she wishes people would realize.
His life was so much more than the hoax.
And as for Julie now, well, she's very matter-of-fact about his death.
I still haven't processed it. He wanted to go. He was ready to go, and I didn't want to see him in pain. And he'd lived a full life. He was 87. He was ready to go. And I don't feel a sense of loss. We had such a full life together.
In Sarasota, Ray Collins, ABC7, your Suncoast News.
Coming up, did you know that Clifford Irving went on to contribute to Sarasota Magazine? That's next on the Trapezoid.
Zufan, part of the U.S. Paralympic rugby team. In my game, movement is everything. I get frustrated when my move is blocked, especially when that guy has no right to be there, even just for a minute. I love a challenge, but I don't like to play this game every day.
A message from United Spinal Association.
ABC7, your Suncoast News. We're here for you. Watch ABC7 wherever you are, on our live stream, on mysuncoast.com, on the ABC7 My Suncoast app, powered by the Eye Associates, providing sight for life, featuring traffic maps and live radar, dining with recipes, and My Suncoast Restaurant Guide. Visit mysuncoast.com. Click on the Apps tab to download the ABC7 My Suncoast app for Apple and Android.
The thought of my sons growing up without me inspired me to quit smoking.
I talked to my doctors, and then I threw away all my cigarettes, ashtrays, and lighters.
I started exercising instead of smoking.
Letting my friends online know I was quitting kept me on track.
Staying away from alcohol when I was first quitting was key.
I kept on trying, learned something each time.
Do whatever it takes.
No matter how many times it takes.
We did it. You can too.
For free help, visit cdc.gov/tips.
My name is Julius. I have cerebral palsy. I work for Farmer Jeffrey Weising Law Firm.
I do a lot of data entry and scanning documents. I want to increase my working experience to make the company much better. At the end of the day, it's good to think of the day's work and to think about what I have accomplished.
Hi, this is Dan Marino. When your business recruits people with disabilities, everybody wins. To find out how, go to abilitieswork.employflorida.com.
So I kind of grew up all across the country. I come from 5 generations of military men. My dad is still active duty. My grandpa is retired Marines. I like going for runs with my dog. I love, taking her out to the dog beach over in Venice. There are so many things here to do on the Suncoast. My goal every day when I come into work at ABC7 is to tell your stories, give you that major local news and those details that you really care about. I'm Jacqueline Matter, and I'm here for you.
Welcome back. We live in an age where it seems there is a new scandal just about every week. I don't know if scandals happened less frequently in the 1960s or 70s, but even as a kid, I remember the scandal involving Clifford Irving and the phony autobiography of Howard Hughes. We are all more than one big thing that we are known for, and Clifford Irving went on to be a prolific writer who eventually settled in Sarasota until his death last month. But he will always be known for that book and the frenzy that ensued. And joining us for more is Pam Daniel, the editorial director of Sarasota Magazine, where Clifford Irving went on to be a contributor of some incredible stories. And this is fascinating. And how you came to know him and ask him to write for you is also a fascinating story.
Well, he just walked into our office one day in the 1990s, and I can still kind of see him, this tall, lanky, very engaging guy. He had a habit of carrying a straw purse from Mexico with all his papers and things in it. And he explained that he was working on a book. He wanted to do a legal thriller set in Florida. And he basically just came in to connect with a local magazine because he figured we would know a lot about the town and we could connect him with some attorneys and judges. And he was just so charming that Bob Plunkett, one of our editors, and I became friends with him, went out to lunch with him, introduced him to the town. And during that period, of course, as you said, he was defined by the hoax. And that's the first thing you thought of when he walked in there. But you could see he didn't really like to talk about it that much. But it just came out one day at lunch that he had spent the summer before he went to jail right here in Sarasota. Just through a coincidence. Actually, it was his father's mistress, ex-mistress, lived here on Longboat Key. And he wrote to her. He had custody of his boys that summer because his wife went to jail first, so one parent could be with the boys, and she invited him to come down. So he spent this crazy, tranquil, but knowing what was ahead of him summer on Longboat Key. And we said, you have to write that story for us.
So he doesn't like talking about what happened, but you convinced him to write a story about that summer before he went to prison. Remind us what he said about that period of time here in Sarasota.
Well, he said it was very surreal. And because Sarasota was like this privileged, quiet enclave, and Murph Clobber was running the Colony Beach and Tennis Resort at the time, and he invited Cliff to come out there with his boys. So he would go take the kids out there in the day and go swimming, but he had a quiet, long time to think about what was ahead. His wife was writing to him from prison saying that she wanted a divorce. That was hanging over him. And it just was such a contrast with what was ahead. And I remember he wrote that a year later when he was in prison, sometimes he could imagine that he could hear the shells on the beach and the water on Longboat Key. That kind of tranquil time would come back to him.
It seems like he was an incredible, charismatic man. Obviously a prolific writer about many different things, but how do you jive that as someone who runs a magazine and has dedicated your career and others at the magazine to writing about truth or nonfiction, fiction, and this man who pulled off one of the biggest capers in literary history?
Well, I wasn't, first of all, it's not that he would write for us very much. We were basically a small magazine, and what we paid compared to what he would be getting for national articles he did. He kind of did it as a favor to us. But he was writing a memoir about his own experience. He wasn't reporting on other things. And it worked out so well because when he came here in the 90s, he was
also trying to figure out the legal system in Florida. At that time, I don't know if it's still true, but you could be before a jury and a jury could sentence you to life and a judge could overrule that. And he was kind of outraged by that. So he came up with the idea a judge could sentence you to death. He wanted to write a book about a man who'd been wrongly convicted. So he was exploring, he went from Sarasota to Rayford, where the prison is, then to Jacksonville. And then it turned out he got arrested and had a run-in with Florida law in Jacksonville.
For what?
It was all really a mistake. He went into a Radio Shack. He was living in Mexico at the time. His wife had bought him, I forget, a recorder or something, and it didn't work.
We only have less than a minute left, but I want to ask you this, that despite what happened, he was able to carve out a very prolific career writing. How did that come to be?
Well, you know, I think he was one of the last of a vanishing breed. He was a swashbuckling, larger-than-life writer, very devoted to his craft. But he lived all over the world in the most romantic places. He lived on a houseboat in Marrakesh. He made and lost a fortune. He had 6 wives. He won a monkey in a poker tournament once. So he just had this curiosity, this passion, and explored the world and hung out with the most amazing people.
Pam, thank you so much for coming in tonight. Fascinating.
You're
Fascinating
welcome.
stuff. Thanks a lot. We are just getting warmed up. Up next, another exclusive, the former U.S. ambassador to South Korea at the trapezoid. Right after we check the First Alert weather. Stay with us.
Attention, Americans eligible for Medicare. Are you getting all the benefits you're entitled to? Did you know there may be money available to lower your medical prescription costs? Call Health Markets and we'll tell you if you qualify.
Hi, I'm Dr. Martin Jeetsi. It's a new Medicare year. That means more changes and more confusion. The key question is, what can you do now to ensure you get the care you need in the coming year?
Call Health Markets today. You may qualify to save money on prescriptions. We'll help you find plans that may cost less, cover more, and could even lower your prescription costs to increase your savings. We help you find all the benefits you're entitled to, and we do it at no cost.
Make sure you have what you need to get the care that's right for you.
Find out if you qualify to receive extra help with your prescriptions. Call the number on the screen now. Representatives are standing by.
I just need a second.
Is your weight holding you back and affecting your health?
Did you see this? Your cousin had a heart attack.
Really?
Excess weight or obesity can be serious, but you can do something about it. Visit yourweightmatters.org. Download the free toolkit to prepare you to speak with a healthcare provider. Your weight does matter. Accept the challenge and take charge today. Visit yourweightmatters.org.
A decade of war has taken an unprecedented toll on our men and women in uniform.
Hundreds of thousands of our veterans are suffering from the trauma of war.
At Justice for Vets, we believe that every veteran should have the opportunity for treatment and restoration. Get involved and go to justiceforvets.org.
Help put treatment within reach of veterans in crisis.
Veterans fought for our freedom. Now it's our turn to fight for theirs.
Our conversation with the former U.S. ambassador to South Korea continues right after we get a check on the First Alert forecast with Chief Meteorologist Bob Harrigan. Bob.
Thanks, Alan, and a gorgeous sunset again tonight. A beautiful day, too. After a cool start, we warmed up into the mid-70s and a few clouds out ahead of a cold front that's going to move on through. But check out the brilliant colors there as the sun dipped below the horizon. And obviously, a lot of photos sent into pics at mysuncoast.com. Kathleen Brunt getting this one. At Venice, sunrise tomorrow will be at 7:21, and we should see generally fair skies to start the day off tomorrow. Lots of sunshine around throughout the morning, and then increasing clouds as this front approaches. So a warmer night tonight. We'll have lows in the low 50s, which is pretty seasonal. And then a cold front moves in on Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening, and then get ready for it. A freeze watch in effect. Freezing temperatures anticipated across much of the Sun Coast tomorrow. And it looks like Thursday morning will be the coldest. A wind chill advisory will also be issued for our entire viewing area, although it won't get down to freezing, say at Siesta, Lombok Key, Anna Maria Island. It will feel that way beginning tomorrow night, so shelters will be opening as a result of that. Now, you can see from the satellite and radar imagery review showing that snow as far south as Louisiana, getting ready to move into the panhandle of Florida tomorrow with some freezing rain and also snow in the early morning hours. This area of low pressure will intensify as it moves off to the east. The wrap around it and the counterclockwise flow will whip this front through and really kick up the seas and wind. A small craft advisory in effect for coastal waters tomorrow as a result of those strong winds picking up in the afternoon specifically and tomorrow evening. Watches and warning, there's that blue area that you see. That's the freeze watch that's in effect until 9 a.m. No freeze tonight, as I mentioned. This is for tomorrow night and Thursday morning. West of I-75 basically not in that freeze watch. This will turn over to a warning by midday tomorrow, and that means that you'll have to take care of your, obviously, your sensitive plants, your tropical plants, if you don't want to lose those. The cold air can kill them when it goes below freezing for several hours. 60 degrees right now, the dew point at 51, and the humidity 72%. We have a north wind at 6. The pressure is still very high at 30.26. The high today was 74, a few degrees above average. The big story, obviously, the cold air that's invading much of the central United States, and this front, which is going to come down with not producing any rainfall here, just very windy conditions and some increase in clouds tomorrow afternoon. Once it blows through, the cold air filters in for just a day, though. It's going to warm up pretty quickly. By Friday, we'll be back to close to 70 degrees, and wind flow will really increase throughout the day tomorrow afternoon. We're talking up to 20 to 25 miles an hour out of the north throughout the afternoon and throughout the evening tomorrow, making for those dangerous wind chills. Small craft advisory in effect, seas running 3 to 5 feet. We'll start off with north winds at 10 knots. It'll pick up to 20 knots in the afternoon. Tides on your screen. The next high tide will be at 11:17. And sunrise, I mentioned, 7:21. The 7-day forecast. Breezy tomorrow, 66 for your high, then falling throughout the afternoon. Wind chills in the 20s on Thursday morning. And then we start to warm up. The weekend is looking really quite nice. Highs in the low to mid 70s. Alan will be back with his guests right after this. Stick around.
Planning a Carnival Fantasy Cruise out of Mobile? Then check out the park and cruise packages at the luxurious Battle House and Renaissance Riverview Plaza hotels. Stay at the Battle House for $169 per night, or the Riverview Plaza for just $149 per night, and leave your car for the duration of your cruise. Includes transportation to and from the cruise terminal. If you're cruising out of Mobile, come stay with us. Call 1-800-MARRIOTT or visit Marriott.com now.
I'm Deshauna Barber. In 2016, I was proud to win the title of Miss USA. What makes me just as proud is my service in the U.S. military. In the service, a soldier gains skills and learns values like discipline and leadership. That makes them an asset to any business that hires them. If you're an employer, on behalf of Coalition to Salute America's Heroes, remember to hire smart and bet on a vet. Visit saluteheroes.org or call this number to learn more.
Exotic animals on a daily basis, and the ones that we have in captivity are really the ambassadors for their wild counterparts. I'm Clayton Rozier from the Big Cat Habitat and Gulf Coast Sanctuary, housing over 150 exotic animals that needed a great home. And if you love animals, please help them. Do it locally. Support your local no-kill shelters, your local wild animal sanctuaries. Make a difference where you can.
Stay connected to your clients and new customers using ABC7 Digital Media Services. Our team of professionals provide a wide array of digital services to help you get the most out of your website. We specialize in building and helping you maintain the most effective digital solutions for your business. It's vital that your online presence stands out, so our experts will equip you with the best resources available. Trust ABC7 Digital Media Services to give you the right tools to grow your business.
Welcome back. The rhetoric and war of words between President Trump and North Korea continues. State-run media in North Korea today calling President Trump's tweets about the size of his nuclear button, quote, the spasm of a lunatic. Tonight, we are honored to be joined by Christopher Hill, the former U.S. ambassador to South Korea, who just happens to be in town for Sarasota's Institute of Lifetime Living Global Issues series. And we should also note that Ambassador Hill is an advisor to the Chancellor at the University of Denver, but also a part-time resident of the Tampa Bay area.
Absolutely.
Welcome to our broadcast. And Ambassador, we live in such dangerous and scary times. And the first thing I wanted to ask you about is that the story that came out on Newsweek this afternoon, that members of President Trump's cabinet are actually weighing the option of whether the U.S. should respond to future North Korean missile and nuclear tests by a targeted first strike on the regime's facilities. What do you think about that?
Well, this is the so-called bloody nose theory, that if they do something, we can kind of hit them and maybe they'll cease and desist. I think the problem is that there's some 20 million South Koreans within range of some 14,000 North Korean artillery tubes. So if we hit the North Koreans with some kind of airstrike, what if the North Koreans respond and those 20 million people are not being, taken care of, they're not in bunkers, they're not in tunnels, and what if they get high civilian casualties out of that, and what if we haven't told the South Koreans? So that's a pretty serious way to go. I can certainly understand why people are thinking about that. I mean, this problem is about as frustrating as any problem in the world, but I think we need to bear in mind that our whole purpose in being there is to protect South Korea, to have this kind of very important alliance for us, and I think we need to be very careful not to be too divergent in how we approach the solution with the South Koreans.
Are we having enough of a national conversation about this?
I'm not sure we are, because I'm not sure Americans understand how kind of dangerous this has become. After all, it's one of these hardy perennials in foreign policy issues. It's been around for 30 years. They've been actually seeking these weapons for some 50 or 60 years. So it's been a problem that everyone's kind of used to hearing about. But what has changed now is they have these intercontinental missiles. They've had some successful tests of nuclear weapons. So I think it is very dangerous right now, and I think it behooves this administration or any administration to put this on the top of their list.
I heard another analysis on one of the networks say the other night, the problem right now is it's very hard to difficult to basically say what the U.S. strategy is.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult because there's no one issue that you can say, well, we're doing this, because you've got to be doing a number of things. You've got to be reassuring South Koreans. You've got to be reassuring the Japanese, our two allies in the region. You've got to be working very hard in the UN, trying to get as robust a list of sanctions as you can. And frankly, there's been a lot of progress in that regard. China has never gone for the kinds of sanctions that are now in place and for which the Chinese voted in the affirmative. So that's a positive step.
So in your opinion, is it counterproductive for the president to be tweeting out the size of his nuclear button, comparing it to the North Koreans' nuclear trigger?
Without putting too fine a point on it, you bet it's counterproductive. It's very counterproductive if you're a South Korean and you have to think from time to time about what your life would be like if North Korea ever attacked that country, and then you see the President of the United States having kind of fun with tweets. I think, we elected a government, not just a person. We elect a government. We have people like the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense. People need to gather around and consider what is the wisest way forward. And I'm not sure tweets are quite capable of capturing wisdom. So I have a problem with that, but I want to make clear we do have people working on this issue, very serious people.
But I also hear people saying, we elected somebody who we knew full well takes sometimes a creative path towards making a point, and after so many decades of what they call strategic patience, maybe this is different, but maybe it'll work because nothing else has.
Yeah. I worked for George W. Bush on this issue. I had some 40 meetings with the North Koreans. I went there several times. I never heard the term strategic patience. So I think we first have to understand that's not everybody's term. Secondly, I think we need to understand the complexity of this issue. Working with China is not for the faint of heart. That is a tough issue and you need to stick with it. And then working with these other allies. I think President would do better, rather than criticize everyone who went before him, I think he might do better to understand that others have dealt with this issue, others have made some address this issue. He'd do better to be consulting with them rather than criticizing them.
But as he often says, he often points back at the last two administrations and basically says whatever they tried to do, it did not work.
You know, whether you're working in any kind of business anywhere, you can always criticize your predecessors. I'm not sure it gets you any better position. So I think the president might want to focus on the problem at hand rather than looking back and criticizing others.
Okay, we have to take a quick break and we'll be back with Christopher, the ambassador to South Korea in a moment.
This is an important announcement. If you're between 50 and 85 and worried about your loved ones, you can still get affordable life insurance for peace of mind.
My life insurance coverage is guaranteed, and I was not required to get a medical exam.
I had high blood pressure and diabetes, and I got my coverage with one telephone call. No exam necessary.
I'm a smoker, and I wanted to take care of my family. I called to get my life insurance and my affairs in order. I wanted to do the right thing.
Call Final Expense No Exam Insurance. Your rates are guaranteed and will never increase.
I called and learned that this insurance cannot be canceled even if you get sick or gain weight.
And there are no restrictions on how my beneficiaries use the money when I'm gone.
Approval was easy and the price was right. I wanted to do this for my children.
Call 800-738-9812. 800-738-9812.
Florida Studio Theater presents the 8-time Tony Award winner Once, held over by popular demand. Captivating and breathtaking, Once is an unforgettable story about going for your dreams and the power of music to connect us all. Critics are calling Once engaging and heartwarming, outstanding, and a flawless production. Audiences are calling it phenomenal and better than Broadway. Once must close January 19th. Tickets can be purchased by calling 941-366-9000 or by visiting floridastudiotheater.org.
Enjoy some of the best Suncoast restaurants on me. Just go to mysuncoast.com/dining, sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already, and you can win a $50 gift card to a restaurant in our area. We'll pick a winner each week, so go on our website and sign up now.
Welcome back. We are being joined by Christopher Hill, the former U.S. ambassador to South Korea and many other places. We should say that you were also the ambassador to Iraq. You were in the Balkans. I wanted to ask you about a story that happened this week. The ambassador to Panama quits over Trump. And it was U.S. Ambassador John Feely who says that my instructions made clear that if I believe I could not abide by the administration's instructions, that he was bound to resign. There's been a lot of discussion about the issue of morale at the State Department and among U.S. ambassadors around the world. What's your take?
There is a problem. There's definitely a problem. And I'd like to say about Ambassador Feely, John Feely, I mean, this is a very tough-minded, great civil servant, foreign service officer of the American people. He also served in the military, combat, air operations. This is a very serious individual. And when he says something like that, there is a problem. I think the problem is not just the president. I think the Secretary of State needs to understand that he leads one of the most talented workforces in the the world. I had the honor, the privilege of working in the State Department for some 33 years. And I think Secretary Tillerson might rethink some of his positions. When he came into the State Department, the first thing he said was, I need to change everything you guys are doing. And that's really not the way to motivate a workforce. And secondly, I think when you deal with some of these problems, and Lord knows they're difficult problems, I know very well they're very difficult problems, but you need to kind of impart a sense of optimism to your troops that, you know, we're going to get through this and we're going to do well in this. And we have a Secretary of State who seems to have this look on his face like he would rather be anywhere else than dealing with these problems. So I think he's had some leadership problems.
This is what I don't get. First thing, he was, you know, the CEO of one of the biggest corporations in the United States. And when you see him on TV doing interviews, he seems really measured. He has been described almost as the adult in the room, in that you know, he has a sober understanding of U.S. policy, although he does not have a good relationship with the president. And then you hear these stories about his management style and how the impact that it's had on U.S. foreign relations.
I think there's no question that from a substantive point of view, he's absolutely an adult in the room. He's been around the world. He knows these issues. When I was Assistant Secretary in East Asia Bureau, I dealt with him on the issue of Indonesia, some of the problems that Exxon was having there. No question, from a substantive point of view, he has that. But you mentioned a couple of problems. One, he does not appear to have a close relationship with his boss, and people in the State Department notice that. They worry, well, you know, can this guy really carry the water? And then secondly, he hasn't really reached out to the staff at the State Department and has instead kind of held up a lot of appointments and instead putting political appointees. You know, we are the only country in the world that puts all these political appointees into kind of line positions. Now, in fairness to Secretary Tillerson, he's probably getting a lot of push on this from the White House Personnel Office. I don't mean to imply that somehow he's making bad decisions all by himself, but you know, this is going to be his legacy, and I think it's time for him to kind of stand up, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. These jobs are temporary. You don't stay in them all your life.
We only have about 45 seconds left, but I wanted to ask you, are you concerned generally in terms of how U.S. foreign policy is thought of and executed at this stage?
Yes, I am. I think, for example, a key element of dealing with North Korea is we need to be sitting down with the Chinese day in, day out, week in, week out, and not just have Secretary Tillerson make a you know, one-off trip there, you know, getting off the plane hopelessly jet-lagged with a terrible tweet coming from the president the night before. We need to have people who are really empowered to do their job. And frankly, the problem is he doesn't seem to want to understand that this is a team sport, not an individual sport.
We'll have to leave it there. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. And for the latest on local breaking news, don't forget to download the updated version of our app. If your current app doesn't work, it's expired, just go to the App Store and re-download it by searching for WWSB or My Suncoast. We'd like to thank our guests for being here tonight, Pam Daniel of Sarasota Magazine and former U.S. Ambassador Christopher Hill. When we return, we'll be joined by our consumer watchdog, Jerry Zivic. Plus, the debate continues on whether or not President Trump referred to African countries as, well, you know by now. We'll be back in a moment.
It's been about a month, and I can honestly say I've seen the change in me. I went from being a depressed girl who didn't want help to this happy, caring girl who loves helping other people. I just really hope that people that went through what I went through get the help that they need, because their story is important and they are loved. Thank you so much for everything.
Every year, 40% of all food in the U.S. never gets eaten.
40%. That's almost half the food we produce.
Food waste is a serious problem. It impacts all of us.
And it's expensive. Your family is throwing $1,500 a year in the trash.
We're working hard to put food waste on the chopping block.
And you can do the same at home.
Learn how to cook it, store it, and share it.
Just don't waste it.
Go to SaveTheFood.com.
A promise was made. A promise that hit the beaches of Normandy. A vow that captured Iwo Jima. A contract that weathered Tet. A pledge that stormed the desert in Iraq. An IOU that braved IEDs in Kandahar. A promise was made to America's veterans. DAV fights to keep that promise, so all veterans and their families get the benefits and support they earned. For help, visit DAV.org.
It doesn't take a scientist to cure hunger or a fancy economist to create safe housing. It takes imagination, creativity, sweat equity. And I think of kids going to school hungry. Hunger, homelessness. In this land of plenty, seriously? Come on, we could fix this. Help out, or don't. The choice is yours.
Your primetime headlines are coming up in a moment, but first, cars that were damaged by floodwaters are sometimes cleaned up and taken out of state and sold. How can you tell before you buy? And here to talk about this and more is ABC7's consumer watchdog, Jerry Zivic. Jerry, I've heard about this before. In fact, I covered this when I worked in Miami. Hurricane-damaged cars being resold here and in other places. And so the first most obvious question is, how can you tell?
Well, one of the easiest ways to tell is to use your nose. If the car smells of mildew, then you know there's a problem. And actually, sometimes if there's too much air freshener, that should put you on alert as well, because it's possible they're trying to cover up a smell.
So let's say you are out test driving a car, you smell those things, but you do like the car. Is there any way that you can look up in fact whether this was a car that was reclaimed from a hurricane or flooding or something like that?
Well, you can take the VIN number and you can look up in the National Insurance Crime Bureau to see if the car has been issued a flood title or a salvage title. However, if the car has never been insured, it's possible it won't be of record, so it's no guarantee.
Explain for a moment the difference in terms of those kinds of titles.
A salvage title is when an insurance company has declared a car a complete loss. A flood title is when the compartment, when the passenger compartment of the car has completely been filled with water.
Is it illegal to sell cars like this to consumers?
Not if you're honest about what you're doing. It's not illegal. One of the protections you could take, though, is to go to a reputable car dealer. They're not going to lose their reputation selling you a bad car. And if you do that, ask point blank, has this car been in a flood? And if they say no, ask them to put that in writing.
Is there anybody out there basically holding these car dealers accountable for things like this?
It's just like any other fraud. The same, potpourri of agencies are holding the car dealers accountable, but you have to be careful yourself. Better not to step in the problem in the first place.
Well, how aggressive is it a law enforcement problem, an issue with the Attorney General's office or any other kind of agency?
Well, the Attorney General basically keeps track of these things. I've never heard of them actually pursuing anybody in terms of selling a car that was marked not a flood that was a flood car.
Right. So you talked about smell and air fresheners and so forth. Is there any other kind of visual thing that you should be looking for?
Well, sure. Rust. If there's any rust on the hinges or any place else, that's a giveaway. If the carpet is a different color than the upholstery, that's a giveaway. Why does an 8-year-old car have new carpet when the rest of the car isn't new? You can pull out the seatbelt to see if the seatbelt is discolored. Those are giveaways.
All right, we'll have to leave it there, Jerry. Thank you very much. Jerry Zivic joins us every other Tuesday for our For Your Benefit segment. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Primetime Headlines.
I owed the IRS $10,000.
I owed the IRS $20,000.
The IRS garnished my wages.
They put a lien on my house.
The IRS is the most powerful collection agency in the world. They do not give up until you pay.
I couldn't sleep. We were being audited. I called Tax Solutions Now, and a great big weight was lifted off my shoulders.
I called Tax Solutions Now, and they got the IRS off my back.
Tax Solutions Now had my wage garnishment lifted in 48 hours.
Tax Solutions Now can get you help. Our agents know the rules, can stop the pain, and get you the best deal.
We saved our home and overcame the most powerful collection agency in the world.
We connect you with a team of former IRS agents and tax professionals who get the IRS off your back. Time is running out. Call Tax Solutions Now.
Call 1-800-565-7740. That's 1-800-565-7740.
Every child follows a path in life. For many, that path will lead them to a door that gives them a place to grow, to learn, to belong, a place to forge their future. Because while many doors open, these doors transform. They did for us. Support your local boys and girls clubs. Great futures start here.
It's me, Artie. Come see what I collected from the Creative Galaxy in my idea box.
Transform your world.
Will you help me make art?
Before you throw it away,
Hey, I have an idea.
think outside the box.
Go be amazing!
Give your cardboard box another life. Recycle.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
Checking primetime headlines, some members of the president's cabinet say they don't remember the million-dollar question. Did the president of the United States refer to countries in Africa as you know what? ABC's Karen Travers has more from the White House.
The debate over whether President Trump did or did not use that word in last week's contentious Oval Office meeting has overshadowed what some of his critics say is the bigger issue. Where does the president want immigrants to come from?
In the Oval Office today, President Trump was asked if he ever said he wanted more people to come to the United States from Norway.
I want them to come in from everywhere.
The president was then asked if he wants to see immigrants from, quote, just Caucasian or white countries.
Thank you.
He says he wants immigrants from everywhere, but the president's policies would suggest otherwise. That controversial travel ban and the $18 billion wall he wants to build on the U.S.-Mexico border. Washington has been consumed with whether the president used a derogatory curse word to describe Haiti and African countries. He said he used tough language, but not that word. But nobody at the White House has disputed that the president suggested the U.S. should bring in more people from places like Norway. His Homeland Security Secretary on the hot seat today on Capitol Hill.
What he was saying was he was using Norway as an example of a country that is, what he was specifically referring to is the prime minister telling him that the people of Norway work very hard.
Secretary Nielsen says President Trump wants to see a merit-based immigration system, but in an awkward moment later, she was asked whether Norway is a predominantly white country. She said she didn't know, but imagines that it is. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
And that is all the time we have for this evening. I'm Alan Cohn. Thanks for joining us and have a good night.